It's another South African show. So today we're going to be talking about some South African spaza shops, mom and pop stores as they are called, that have been shut down, about 1,041 of them, because of consumption of pesticide contaminated food. And to discuss that is Mustafa Jinadu. Mustafa, you're welcome to the
Okay,
show.
okay, thank you. So let's start off with the thousand and so spaza shops that have been shut down in South Africa due to a spate of poisonings for young children and other individuals. I think this is a scapegoating because they need to make an example of someone, so they do 1,000. But at the same time, they extend the deadline on which was supposed to be December 17th for everybody to register to make sure all spaza shops are registered and therefore can be observed and examined for health standards and everything else. If they're extending it, to me, that shows that they can't close down all of these shops because if they did so, a lot of people would starve because a lot of South Africans now can only eat food from spazas because they are cheaper. You understand what I'm saying? But they
Yes, I
have to make an
understand.
example. So why are they extending it? They gave everybody to January 17th. And the whole rationale for this um, making sure that everybody complies with registration is they want to say that there are a lot of foreign nationals that are there that are selling poison food to South Africans. So they want to regulate it. And only South African citizens or only foreigners who have the right type of visa can own spazas. So I think the government is trying to use foreigners as the excuse, but at the same time, they're extending the deadline because whether it's foreigners who are selling or South Africans, South Africa has a poverty level in which most South Africans can't have regulated food because the government doesn't want to spend on it throughout the whole country. They don't want to spend on it in the areas where poor people live. They only want to spend on it in the areas which are middle class, and they don't want to regulate it. So they want to blame everything on foreign spaza owners and pretend like they say, oh, if we have only South African spaza owners or people who are properly licensed, the problem will go away. But I think it goes deeper than that. What do you think, Falabi?
I agree with you that there's a big disparity between poor Black South Africans and wealthy elites, largely as a legacy of apartheid. This forces small-scale spaza shop owners to cut costs at the compromise of safe practices. And this
Yeah.
implicates systemic inequality perpetuated by both local governance and historic privilege. Now, if you look at regulatory failures by the government is actually supposed to, monitor and enforce food safety standards across small-scale stores. But if you look at most of the owners of these small-scale stores, they are poor people that can't afford, to regulate the quality of what is being sold. And so they are vulnerable to unsafe
Oh, sorry. So
practices.
what I would add is that no, I would say that the store owners themselves, yeah, you're right. They don't want to regulate, but the bigger problem is that the government doesn't want to spend to force them to regulate.
Oh,
Go
sure.
continue.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
government absolutely is the one to blame here because
And the government also is caught in a jam because they've given them extensions because they don't want a situation in which people don't meet the extension and there's no spazas or there's too few spazas. And then South Africans start to starve because they can't go to the regulated stores. Continue. You see what I'm saying? Yeah.
yes, I
Go ahead.
understand what you're saying. This is where
Yeah.
the question of subsidy should come in. Government should step in, subsidize what is required to regulate this thing to standard so that the people that own these spazas and the mom and pop stores can actually sell regulated
Yes.
food
Yes.
and without having the pressure of finances. Government steps in and mediates and helps them.
Yeah. And covers because it's clear that the government doesn't really want these sponsors to shut down because if they did, they wouldn't have given them an extension to register. And even after
Exactly.
these sponsors register, they don't have to prove that they have regulations. It will still be up to the government. I think it's just a reaction to make it to calm the people. What do you think? Yeah.
And I also think that the people that are supplying unregulated pesticides and
Yes.
herbicides and substandard goods without proper labeling, because I had some of the issues were labeling and properly identifying those things that were poisonous to
Yes.
food. So some of the people that are supplying unregulated pesticides should also be held culpable, likely connected to broader economic
Yeah,
structures.
and this goes to a deeper question because forget about they're saying that foreign spaza people are not following regulations and are giving children poison food. Where is the poison coming? It's most likely coming from the insecticides. Where is the insecticides coming in? Now we go back to the xenophobic angle. They say, oh, it must be from Mozambique or other countries. But no, we don't know where it is. But wherever the food that these children are eating, before the spaza owners, whether they're foreigners or South Africans, they're not the ones that are poison is they're getting poisoned food. And this is a problem of illegal pesticides being sold within South Africa because they're cheaper, but they're more toxic. What do you think?
Yeah. Yes, I agree with you. And I think what the government can do is to offer affordable, non-toxic pest control methods to reduce reliance on hazardous chemicals. There are
Yeah.
non-toxic pest control methods that the government can afford, but like you rightly mentioned, they're unwilling to do this. Perhaps
Yeah, because
they're
it's all about corruption. South Africa is
exactly,
controlled by South Africa is and I don't want anybody to say we're talking bad about South Africa. Same thing with Nigeria. All African countries, including South Africa, are being having their resources stolen by politicians and also by foreign entities. So what's happening is that the type of pesticides that are needed in rural areas where people need food because they're poor and they need to farm is not being provided because there's no money for it. The government should be providing the money, but the money is not there because South African politicians are selling the country to foreign entities that are taking all of its gross domestic product, its GDP. So there's nothing left after, especially after the politicians themselves, Malema, Zuma, Ramaphosa, all of these leaders, Shivambu, all of these people, after they sell everything to foreign corporations, they also take their own, and they also do bank scandals and loot the country. And there's no money to provide proper pesticides and proper food chain delivery to Black South Africans. What do you think, Falabi?
of course,
Yeah.
you absolutely nailed it right. Some of these chemical companies that are providing pesticides that are polluting foods and making them unsafe to eat. Some of them are being invested in by members of the government. You know,
Yeah, and also it's a
government
cheap
personnel.
alternative because the government. So these pesticides are cheap, but they're toxic.
They are
They're not good
toxic,
because
exactly.
yeah,
And those
and the reason it's
toxic ones
happening
are
is
actually being invested in by personnel in government. So it will be difficult for
because
them to
it's higher
regulate
cost of
against
production,
it.
higher cost of production.
Yes.
Yeah, regulate or even produce it, it costs money. You
And the
know.
supply chain monitoring that government's supposed to do is not effective. So suppliers are not being held accountable for ensuring that pesticides and food items meet safety standards. Why? Because they have vested interest and they're making profit
Yeah,
off the corruption
it's all
at
about
the
money. There's no
expense of
money for
people's
it.
health.
Health and lives. It's the same thing in America. The government doesn't check on guns because gun people who create guns create violence in America, and they pay off the politicians to not to regulate the guns. So it's the same thing. The politicians in South Africa are not regulating the pesticide situation, and it has to do with money has to go to someone, and it's not going to go to the poor and to the Black. That's basically it. Now, I want to go back to the next thing. They keep looking for excuses. The South Africans always want to use the excuse that it's foreigners. The mining thing, oh, it's foreign miners under the ground. We don't care about them. With foreign laborers are coming and stealing our jobs. Now, foreign shop owners are poisoning our children. No, this is a problem within South Africa, which is endemic, in which there's inequality between the rich and the poor, and the country is being
Yes.
looted by politicians and companies. So poor people lose and then they blame foreigners. What I'm saying now is that this problem of poisoning in South Africa deals with the problem that the government is not regulating what's happening inside of its country with fertilization, with food chain and quality assurance. And it's not the people that are foreigners who are buying, they're at the end of the chain. They're not part of that process. They only get the food goods. So what I'm saying that within South Africa, poisonous toxic foods are being distributed to retailers, whether they're South Africans or Africans or Nigerians. The retailers are not the problem. The problem is the distribution system, which is run by capitalists who are empowering South Africa and around the world and believe that the best of our resources should be towards the rich white and the black rich too. What do you think, Afolabi? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, what you've nailed it spot on.
The rich
Is
white and the black rich. If you're
yeah,
black and you're rich, you're almost white. Go
the
ahead. Yeah.
supply chain is compromised. Suppliers providing unregulated pesticides and substandard goods
Because they're cutting corners. Yeah.
without proper labeling or warnings share the responsibility. Now, they're
Yeah.
likely connected to broader economic structures dominated by the elite. Now, we know that most of the people that own these spaza shops are poor Black South Africans. They need resources to invest in proper pest control. Now, this is where the government should come in and mediate. And like I said, some kind of subsidy should be available to these people because even these spaza shops is solving the problem of the middle class, the poor and desperate in
Yeah,
South
that's
Africa.
the only food they can buy. That's the
That's
only
the only
food they
food they
can
can
buy.
buy. They can't go to shops
Checkers,
and yes, they can't go
pay
to
pay right or
stores.
whatever.
Yes,
That's right.
exactly. All these big stores and departmental stores and stuff. We have stuff like that in Nigeria as well. We call them chemists or mami market, but it serves a particular portion of the populace, like the middle class, that can afford it. Now, to regulate it and make it safe, government has to come in with some measure of subsidy to ensure that whatever is being sold is standard and is not poisonous for human consumption.
Yes. And that goes to back that South Africa is and Congo and Nigeria are the richest countries in Africa and the richest countries in the world, along with a few countries like Russia and the US. And there's no reason why all of our citizens can't get food that's not contaminated, whether they're poor or
Contaminated,
rich.
yeah.
Thank you very much. We want to say we love South Africa, and we want to say that
Oh, yeah, sure. We
along
love
with South
South
Africa,
Africa, just like
Nigeria,
we love Nigeria as well.
South Africa, Mozambique. We also love Mozambique. Guys from Mozambique have been complaining. We love Africa. So what we're saying is that we're pushing for our governments and also us to be accountable to make sure that our resources, because we're a resource-rich continent, that we continue to have our resources to feed our children. Because Africa is the motherland, and what good is the motherland if her children are dying from poisoning,
And
from
contamination of
malnutrition,
food.
from crime, contamination? All right, so last thoughts, Afolabi, and take us out. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to address systemic inequality. You've mentioned it all. There's a lot of inequality between the poor and desperate and the South African elite. This has to be addressed by the government. They have to provide targeted support to communities that are marginalized. And then South Africa can achieve a safer and more equitable food system. Those are my parting words.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, and please like and subscribe. Global Politics Africa. We represent the world from an African perspective. Like and subscribe. Thank you. Good night.